Hi, the date is the 18th of June, 2026, and today I kind of had to accept something that I really didn't want to, and that's the fact that I am genuinely, I think, delusional, where I will create entire realities in my head and obsess over the past and overanalyze, and the best way to explain it is my internal is way too overwhelming, so I experience my external internally. I want to feel emotions, I want to feel excitement, love, and all of these emotions. But whereas most people feel them through the external world, I turn internally for them. And that has become a massive problem for me. And it is stopping me from actually living my life in the external world and having those feelings. Instead of having an actual romantic partner, I'll picture someone and picture living like a whole relationship with someone and get those feelings that way, and then I'll just feel bad about it. And it's a cycle of shame and not actually living my life that I can see myself regretting in the future. The delusions are specifically very, very strong when I'm either watching a movie, and I think that's why a lot of people like anime so much. I'm not saying that's the sole reason, but why I liked it so much was I would envision myself as the main character and feel the emotions they were having. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm not joking. I think I am a bit delusional. And it's also when I'm listening to music, either I'm singing or just listening, and I'll envision like that kind of like playing, and then I'll envision a storyline of my ideal life, of myself in the perfect version of myself. And it is actually stopping me from having those feelings in real life and having those experiences in real life. So I think this video is about leaving that behind, no more delusions. And in the future, to solve this, I'm not just going to shame myself and then try to stop doing it. I'm going to replace it with something. I'm going to focus on being external. I'm going to, go on dates more with girls. And I'm going to be honest, I just can't listen to music as much anymore. I can't watch that many movies if it's not at like a movie theater or something surrounded by people, because I will get that delusion, and it's not good. It's like a disease. I think it's genuinely a mental illness, and it's something that I have to confront, because if I keep going down this path of not confronting it, and whenever I feel emotion I don't like in the real world, I will retreat back into my delusional world. And that's not how you should live your life. I shouldn't go around and every time I have a bad experience just retreat back into my comfort zone, in my shell, where in my world where there's no progress. I need to stay in the real world and feel those bad emotions, and then take it as it is and not retreat back into my delusions. And I just really wanted to make this video. If anyone else is struggling with delusional or picturing an ideal version of themselves but never moving it into the real world, or people who get obsessed over all the internal stuff, like I'm really good at analyzing emotions, all of the internal stuff, but when it comes to the external stuff, like the doing and the taking action and the having the experiences, I run away from all that. And I don't want to do that anymore, because I want to live my life and enjoy my life, And I think some people do have the opposite problem, where they're too much in achieving and in the external world and not in touch enough with their emotions and that. But I definitely have the opposite problem, where it's ironic, the external world is controlling my internal world. I don't have these emotions, but I know I need to have these emotions, but I avoid the external world. So what it does is it forces me to have those emotions in my internal, which is where creating these scenarios come from. So you will have these emotions and these feelings, but it's your choice if you want to put in the work to get those feelings in the external world instead of manifesting a delusion, or I guess you could say illusion, in your head to get those. Where if you do it in the real world, you learn, you grow, and you adapt. But the thing about having those in the external world is they're not actually real. Or I guess you could say they're real, but they don't, there's a ton of other things that come with them. With the delusions, you're just getting the feeling, and you're strengthening the pathways in your brain that help you create those delusions. That's all you're doing. But in the real world, from what I've noticed from actually interacting with people, is I learn new stuff, like tons of new stuff. I don't always just feel those emotions, and sometimes I don't feel those emotions in those situations, but I actually take more out of it. Like going on dates, I'll learn how to socialize, and I'll learn more about a person and how to enjoy life when it doesn't go how I planned, and kind of giving up that sense of control, because I think that's what always pulls me back into the delusions, is that sense of control. I can control the delusions. I can control how I'm perceiving myself in them and how I feel. But it's not healthy, because it just creates a massive amount of cognitive dissonance. How I see myself versus how I actually am. I see myself as like this, I picture myself as like this amazing person in my delusions that can do all this stuff, and that is so cool. And then there's how I actually am, and that's very different. And I think a big part of living in the external world and having those experiences, you need to accept yourself as you are. And that's really hard, especially with these delusions, is I will picture past events, but picture them differently. So not only am I kind of invalidating the lessons I learned from those events, I'm also wishing I did stuff in them differently, and I'm not accepting how I am or how I was, and I'm kind of hating on myself, you know? Like if you pictured yourself as a kid and you picture how you're talking to how you're like acting, how like your actual self is, would you like say that to a kid? Would you say, you know, you're a loser? How you think that affects that inner child? How you think that affects that kid? If you tell them they're a loser and they should be all this, by having those, you picture yourself as perfect and you hate on yourself for not being that perfect version of yourself, that is degrading. And with all that degrading, then you try to go into the external world with these preconceived notions that you're not good enough, and then the external world, like when you come in with that bias, it kind of reinforces that. And so you end up in a position where you're just in a feedback loop with a bias of people don't like me and I'm not good enough, and it just reinforces. So it makes you retreat back into those delusions. So the first step to breaking those delusions is to get rid of that bias that you're not good enough, or the version of you now isn't how you should be. And it's like accepting the past and forgetting that, and not trying to put pressure on the future, where you can actually just be yourself in the present moment and stop obsessing over what could have been or what could be. And I think that's the main way to get rid of those delusions. And then once you've done that, you can start moving into the external world, and things can start going well. You can maybe go on a date, and without that preconceived notion that you're a loser, you're just going on that date with just going on the date for the sake of having a good time. not saying expectations, not saying I'm a loser based on what I've done in my past around dating, and just going on that, it lets you actually have a good time. And sometimes you do need to learn a lesson, and that will come, but you don't want to just instantly retreat back into your shell. And you want to kind of take the external world, learn from it, but also just enjoy the process of being in the external world and try to find those feelings. You know, if you feel you're not loved and you want to create a delusional world of you having an actual relationship, instead of doing that, you know, accept that it will come in time, and then reach out to some people. Or I wouldn't reach out to people for the sake of wanting to be loved, but, you know, accept that will come with time, and the first step of that is making some friends, and then maybe asking some girls for their numbers, and then maybe going on some dates. And at some point, if you feel that love, that's good, and that's what the whole living life is about. But if you don't, or if you think you're not going to, and then you have those delusions and try to manifest that and create that in your head, then it'll just pull you further from the external world, and more of those negative things that will just feedback loop you into cutting the external world off fully. And yeah, which is not good. So yeah, that's what I'm working on, and yeah, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching.